Welcome to Full Lesson in 10, where we give you everything you need to teach outstanding PE lessons. This is going to be a tough one to fit in 10 minutes. We're doing javelin today, so I've not even got time to introduce you, Shane. Let's get into it. Roll the titles. Right, as always, we're going to start with a full range of objectives for you to pluck 3 from that suit the ability level of your class. They're going to go quick, so pause the video if you need to take a deeper look. So if you search Google for javelin warm-ups, what you'll probably find are warm-ups that include mobility actions like this, using the javelin, and this. Well, I hope I don't need to explain why that's not a good idea with 30 students. So I'm going to give you 2 options. The first option would just be to do a command style dynamic warm-up, and they can include dynamic stretches like the ones here, here, and here. Now, this isn't the most creative of warm-ups, but it's time efficient and it may well get you a few more throws during your lesson. As an alternative and maybe a more engaging approach, what you can do is have students run into space and then on your whistle, they high-five the closest classmate. Now, this puts an emphasis on technique, because if students concentrate on technique, then their high-five might look a bit more like this. Whereas if they go for power and try and create the loudest sound, then it may well end up like this. After 1 or 2 minutes of doing that, you can have a discussion with your class javelin. You need to put an emphasis on technique in order to get the javelin going through the right flight path. Those that go for full-on power straight away may well end up with a foul throw. So next, here is how I would set up the lesson.
Okay, so this is how I would set up the lesson. We're kind of assuming here that there's a good amount of equipment for a class of 25 to 30, so 10 javelins ideally. This would mean that you've got groups of 3, any more than so. This would be a good setup. You may well have different weights to those javelins, so just make sure that you distribute the heavier javelins to the students that are maybe a bit more physically developed. So we have tape measures there, where that's going to help us appreciate how far the students are throwing the javelin and help them relate back to the levels from the start. We have students safely sat behind the thrower, so they'll be observing, and the blue cone shows where they should not be any further from. Now, on the yellow cones, we actually have 4 cones on top of each other of different colours. That means that each student has a cone to go and mark their personal, records what their personal best is during the lesson. We're using cones to clearly mark out what those target distances were in our lesson objectives as well. So, when students throw their javelin, the key command here, and there'll be safety points at the end of this where you can pause and you can look at all the safety points for a javelin lesson, but this really is the key one, is that you need to make sure students know at the start of the lesson to wait until everybody has thrown their javelin. So they should not move until you say the word collect. Once you've said the word collect, then students can walk out, collect their javelin, and then carry it back to the next student who will be waiting, and they carry it back vertically, pass it to the next student vertically, and then they will go and join at the back behind the blue cone.
Right, you'll know when students are making common errors when you see the javelin do this, or when you see the javelin do this. these errors can come from two main things. So the first thing is something I see when I observe a lot of javelin lessons, is when teachers tell their group to aim the javelin at a 45-degree angle. Now, if you can throw the javelin a long way, that's fair enough. If you're not throwing it too far, then sometimes that can be aiming a little bit too high and can end in the javelin going up and rotating and landing on its base. The other error is when a student wants to add lots of power and then the javelin is pointing in this direction, and then throughout the throw comes round, which then sends it off like a helicopter. In order to concentrate on the flight path of the javelin throughout the throw, I'd do a couple of things. The first thing is make sure the first throw that students perform is just both feet facing forwards, and then they concentrate on getting the javelin to land in the ground with the pointy end first to create a legal throw. So that will look a bit like this. From here, you can start adding power and getting the students to try and add a bit of distance to their throws. So do some questioning and try and coach out the theme of transfer of weight and what students need to do with their body in order to add distance. So some questions have popped up for some ideas of the type of questions you could ask. Now with the javelin, there's quite a lot of technique points for you to gradually coach your students. In order to save a bit of time, I'm going to put these across a couple of PowerPoint slides, and then you can pause the video to take a closer look. As students try to beat their personal best and start trying to add a bit more power, you may notice those helicopters starting to appear again. And if that's the case, you can do this exercise where one of the students that isn't throwing can support their classmate in trying to get the feel for what the javelin should feel like going through the throw, pointing in one direction. So this is what that would look like. In a javelin lesson, throw after throw after throw can get a little bit boring. So to up the engagement towards the end of the lesson, here's how you can put together a nice differentiated competition.
Okay, so this is what the pitch will look like after everyone's had a fair few throws. So they should be able to tell which cone is theirs fairly easily. So at this stage, it can get quite boring, throw after throw after throw. So I would add in some, I would differentiate so that everyone is equally engaged. So to differentiate, I would walk along and I would pick up the 4 best cones. So I'll quickly circle these here. So they're my 4 best. I pick them up and I would say, right, you 4 stand up, go into League 1. And then I'll do the same with the next lot. Oh, that's a dodgy circle. So the next 4 here. And then I pick them up and say, right, you guys head into League 2, and so on and so on. So then it will look a bit like this. So you've got your different leagues sat down, ready to view the competitions at the end of the lesson. And then you've got your League 1 ready to throw. So if you've got time here, it can be beneficial throwing one at a time, because it gives you your kind of final, almost summative assessment of the lesson, and you can check out the individual techniques. If you haven't got time, they can all throw at the same time. You still should be able to tell who the winner is. You've got obviously your onlookers that are watching as well to help decide, and then it's clear who's won, and they would get their reward point or whatever your behaviour management system would involve. And then League 5, who are likely to be low ability, they've still got that opportunity to win that reward point as well. So that's how I would set up a competition at the end of your javelin lesson.
Okay people, hopefully that was helpful. As always, if it helped you at all, share it if you can, that would be much appreciated. And I'll see you in the next video.